Hey everybody, this is Andrew from the future, but also the past at the same time. I recorded this entire episode and the audio was screwed up. So here we are now redoing the audio. So we had an E4. I'm checking there to see the creation date of the account because we've had some suspicious fellows lately. In our games, but his account's pretty old, so I wasn't too worried about it. And here we already have, if you notice, we declined the Smith Morra, and we took on D4, and he played Queen takes instead of C takes D4, which is normal on the Alapin. And here we always do what we did in the game, cover the knight, followed by knight C6 kicking the queen, and then F5 when the queen goes to E4, and then B5, what I played there is a gambit. If you take, I go queen c7, hitting e5, you go back to e2, and then I'll play a5, threatening bishop a6, and you can't hold on to the e5 pawn reliably. That's my understanding of it, based on the prep I've done, which here I'm already out of prep. He's not trying to take the pawn, which surprisingly not very common. People really don't take that pawn very often, but I've only played this maybe like 5 times in an actual game. Here a5, already looking at ideas of bishop a6, but c4 will be coming to prevent that. But even if c4, we might have things like knight b6. But I think it's just a bit early. Just looking at the big diagonal that his bishop would have against our rook. I think we need to get some developing moves in. But he plays ace3, which seems weakening for him. And then knight takes. I was assuming he had to take with a pawn because bishop a6, but after knight takes bishop a6, he just has knight takes d5. And even though we're going to exchange there, our pawns are like a complete mess on f5, d5, d7. I think the position's hard to play, especially because he has got a very good bishop, and we do not have the bishop pair anymore because we gave it away for the exchange. So here I opted to just play slower and just damage the structure. Then put the pawn in that diagonal. We create a target. He doesn't get the same weaknesses, so he can't really give up the exchange here. And then we're going to complete our development. It's hard to determine where to put my bishop, but it feels very clear to me that we just want to get castled here. Let's not to worry about capturing any of these targets. This position has a bunch of holes in it, so let's consolidate and then start increasing the pressure. So that's why I decided on a bishop move here. We could also claim the open file with the rook and get it off the diagonal, but we do that next move, as you see, which our opponent should have probably prevented with his own rook b1 or something of the sort, although his move wasn't. Yeah, he can't go bishop e3, I'm saying, because I can take, and he can't take with the queen or he loses a pawn, so his structure will get damaged. I want to play knight here, but the rook's open, so I think it's time to move the rook, is what I'm saying. Or no, I castle, so never mind. I'm just wrong. As per usual. Now I want to move the rook, and now I'm threatening knight d4. It seems really good, because I'll get in on the second rank. Oh, he goes knight g5. And now I'm not liking knight d4 as much, because he can just go queen h5 with the tempo. And my grand old plan is not working out so well. I find out later in the analysis that queen h5 is not that big of a deal, because we have h6 there too as well, and he can't go queen g6 because we just take the knight, and even though his queen is all up, that's his last knight, and his dark squared bishop really isn't going to contribute. Although I guess I could take and then go h6, which would be annoying, so maybe I should be scared. So I'm not too upset with h6 there. I don't think it was that big of a difference in the evaluation. We should be comfortably ahead here, just because of our very active bishops, and we're pointing at targets. You can see my idea here of after he recaptures, we hit the rook and then go rook b2, in target f2. I see here though that once we go rook b2, he's gonna go rook c2, and you know, things seem to slow down for us there, and I just see an easy way to win a pawn here. So I decided to go for that instead. Or do I? I'll never tell. No, I go for it. I'm just taking forever. Okay, there you go. We'll just win a pawn. I'm really paranoid because the last few games I felt like I've played pretty well, but we've just gotten outclassed, which it happens seemingly in intervals where, well, the last game, it's like the most critical theory of the Taimanov that the queen f3 variation. And I played theory up to where I knew it, and then I immediately blundered. But we learned one extra move of theory. But that whole line is critical. Like, you have to think on every move, because as soon as you don't know something, it's very easy to mess up, as you saw in the game where I lost immediately after making my first mistake. So, alright, he makes a couple blunders here. We won the exchange. There's not much to say about it. You didn't really have to give up that exchange. But his position is definitely under pressure. And then here, instead of taking the pawn and pinning my own bishop, I decide to just trade off the light squared bishops. Seems like his most active piece. And it makes his king weaker. So that's my idea. Piece exchanges generally favor the person that's ahead as well. And I'm looking at his last minor piece compared to my rook. And I definitely think that his bishop is going to have problems and just be a target. So here we double up, looking at ideas of rook b1, pinning the queen. He'd have rook c2, c1 there, but there's more exchanges in that case, which is fine by me. We're going to play the more forcing variation, but maybe we should consider queen c6 first, although I think he could just had f3 there and been totally fine. Here we are considering queen e4. I'm thinking he'd have to take the queen, but as we see, he doesn't, because he doesn't, and he's totally fine. Well, by totally fine, I mean losing, but not losing another piece. His position is, in fact, completely lost here. We just have to convert, and that is the goal. So queen e4, and then I think he thinks for a while on these. Nope, he doesn't. He plays it immediately. Never mind. I think for a while here, I think. I'm thinking, what am I thinking about? Let me try to remember. I'm looking at the fact that g5, I'm worried about bishop takes g5. I was thinking about queen g4 check, but the king just goes back, and he also doesn't have to take on g5. I think if he takes bishop g5, he loses. Why didn't I play g5 here? Oh, right. I was worried about queen takes d7. And then if pawn takes f4, queen e6 check. And it seemed like there's a possibility for a perpetual, which would really be annoying. So that's why I was avoiding that. Yep, there I'm finding that. Oh, yeah, even if queen d7, I could just take the rook. But with my pawn no longer on g7, it just feels very likely that there'd be a perpetual there. I think there is a perpetual there. I just don't know where I go with my king. So I refrained from playing g5, I think correctly. And I decide I'm just going to consolidate my position, which is really what I need to be doing. And now queen takes d7. We take the rook, and there's no longer a perpetual because we have the pawn on g7. Maybe there is like queen d7, queen takes. No, because we're just totally fine there. We always have time to bring our rook back. That's the main thing, is that in this variation we have time to do the things that we need to do to not get forced into a draw. Okay, so here he's preventing the advancement of my pawn, and I decide the easiest solution. We're kind of down a lot on time. My opponent's not using any time at all, which is hilarious. I always love that. But anyway. So I decide we're gonna consolidate the position further. Don't want to play rook b7. I'm worried about like ideas of queen c6, and then after d takes, queen checks on d8. So I want to keep that back rank covered. He pushes away our queen, but I feel like he's making more weakening moves. Although it's probably fine. His king's kind of safe on h3 for the time being. Once I get g5 in though comfortably, I think it's gonna be difficult. Oh, we're also poking at that square. This is also covering a lot of what do you call them? Advancing squares for that outside passer in the A file. I call it the outside passer. I don't know if you would consider an outside passer in this position. I think that's only something you'd refer to if it was like if more pieces were traded off, but we're more of in a middle game here. So maybe it's a potential target still, but we get this in, and then after we take the c pawn, the f pawn will be hanging, which is, I guess, kind of proving that the f pawn was a weakening move. The f move was a weakening move. Notice after we take, we're threatening checkmate on g4. I think you just go back to h3, and then we go queen h5 check, queen g2, rook up there. Yep, exactly what I'm describing. Rook blocks, rook takes, queen takes, a5. And there's no real way to prevent checkmate because our rook's going to b2 no matter what. And he has to move his queen or it's going to get pinned. And his bishop can't block because his bishop is a terrible piece because of that pawn on e5. And his bishop hasn't moved the whole game since it moved there. So it's kind of validating my decision to trade off the light squared bishops. Because this light squared bishop was his last decent minor piece. So by trading off to his best piece for a pretty good piece of mine, he's left with what? His dark squared bishop, and he's definitely suffering for it. So here, notice that g5 is checkmate because his bishop's pinned, which is why I played king h7 instead of rook takes, because I want to keep that on the board. But he finds rook c7, which, well, I don't know what he plays next. It's a mystery. Who knows? Could be anything. Anyway, he thinks for, I think, a little bit here, but okay, our position's still totally winning. It's very hard to stop g5 without giving up material. She does eventually with rook c7. There you go. And after looking at this, I just don't see a way to proceed very comfortably. I mean, obviously I could play a3, but then maybe something like queen d7 or rook takes g7, queen d7 check, and maybe we're looking at those perpetual positions again, especially because h6 will be hanging after rook g7 check, and that looks super annoying. So it looks like I pretty much have to go ahead and go back to where I was before. Go ahead and play rook b7, not allowing queen d7. Sorry, rook takes g7, queen d7 check. I think it's just a draw. I could be mistaken though. So I go back king h8, threaten g5 again. And now I'm just resolved to take and play g5, winning material. And this should just be clearly winning. But I do find a way to make it complicated. Instead of just taking the pawn on g3, I move my rook, giving potentially checkmating ideas to him along this h4. Notice he's threatening checkmate in 1, checkmate in 2, which would be hilarious if I just mess that up. But I don't, luckily. It doesn't have checkmate, which is really all we needed. Looking at rook e8, and no matter what he does, I didn't see that he had rook d7 here, or sorry, king d7. For some reason I thought every time I take the pawn it'd be with check, but it's not true. So we're definitely giving him some counterplay. My time's ticking down, so things are a little bit more tense than I wanted them to be. Perhaps a symptom of my opponent using too much time, or using most of his time later in the game, as now that we're later in the game we're struggling. But here he blunders immediately, allowing the exchange of queens, and even though I lose my rook, the A pawn is unstoppable. So we get another queen pretty much immediately. Protect this pawn, then go back for some reason instead of just playing queen e4, and then make things a little bit complicated. Our opponent's playing till the end, which people do that. People do that a lot now. I don't know why. Including me. Avoiding the stalemates. Setting up the checkmate. Double checking that there's no stalemate. And we got the checkmate. There you go. We did it. Okay, I'm going to show some of the analysis. Let's see. Let's just go ahead and skip ahead. I'm talking about very important stuff, I'm sure. Yeah, the analysis here. I don't know if you can see my. You can't see my mouse. We basically played pretty perfectly, and by perfectly I mean we didn't mess up our advantage, and we never really had a disadvantage. So this line's pretty comfortable for black. Just the f5. If e takes f6, you obviously just take with the knight, and then you're hitting the queen again, and you have a clear center there. And b5, for the reasons explained, you can't really take it because we win the e5 pawn, so it's just a good gambit. And yeah, definitely prioritize developing the king side first before going for this a5 b5 idea. And I'm guessing it's because if our opponent plays accurately, they can perhaps mess up our structure with like something like knight d4, I imagine, after developing the bishop. Something along those lines. I don't think a6 was very accurate from him. Sorry, a3, not a6. The Imperial definitely likes our position. It doesn't like bishop f4 at all. For reasons you can imagine, it didn't move from that position the entire game after it was played there. Yeah, it just became a target, basically. A completely useless piece is basically a pawn. It was literally a pawn after it played f4. It never moved again until it was taken. Or until it took g5, sorry. Which is what a pawn would do, so. Anyway, here I'm noticing that knight d4 is possible because queen here wasn't that good, although I'm worried about h takes g5, bishop takes g5. Just doesn't seem as good. I don't know. There's probably some easy way to thwart that. Probably maybe knight e7 or something. I don't know. Anyway, we win a pawn. That's obviously a mistake. Bishop b4. Skewer. And for some reason in this position I was like, am I losing? Like, why is he playing like this? But you know, sometimes games go like this. And like, so where do we play it in there? And then, you know, all these moves are going to be good. We're not really getting rid of our advantage, but it's still hard to make progress somewhat for us. Well, not really, because we got the h-pawn. But it's hard to prevent counterplay, which is why I played rook back. You know, maybe it was a better move, but we want to keep things simple because we're running low on time. And that's what we managed to do. I really like rook b4. That would have been a cool checkmate, but he saw it, so. Rook c8 was a good response to that. Here I'm thinking there's a checkmate with rook b4 here, but the bishop can just get back. But the actual move, yeah, is rook g7. And the bishop's pinned because that would be checkmate on that square that is red. Force move. But anyway, there's nothing too much more in the analysis here. Everything pretty much normal. Yep. Anyway, still trying to do this every day. I'm playing in some over-the-board tournament this weekend. And I need to release the last video of the last day of the Indianapolis Chess Open. which went alright. Our over the board ratings, 1977. My peak rating is 1989. But oh my god, that is loud. But after this current tournament, which is a weekly game a week type deal, hopefully it'll be over 2,000 for the first time ever. But we'll see if we win this next game. I'm currently 2-0 in that. I showed off the first game in my first episode of the National Master Series. I'm practicing. You know, it's a lot easier to talk when there's a game going on. I don't know why. It's a lot harder for me to talk when I'm actually having to compile together some thoughts about my analysis, which sometimes doesn't go as well, but it's good practice. And frankly, good for my chest as well. Just vocalizing what I'm thinking about, which isn't always rational. And sometimes when you vocalize it, that's when you realize it's not rational. But anyway, this has been day 52. Glad to finally get a win there. We think we lost a couple in a row. Or we had a lot of draws too. Just not getting very good games, but this game felt good. This is a game we needed. Anyway, how long is this video going for? I really do a thorough analysis here, and then move my camera around. Anyway, that was day 52. My audio, because I was muted the whole time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.